American Civil War. This was the bloodiest clash in the U.S. preceding this contention. Contrasting conviction frameworks and economies caused a crack among northern and southern states. The North contradicted the spread of subjugation into states where it didn't as of now exist. Then, the Southern economy was to a great extent dependent on manors kept running by slave work, with the goal that area battled abolitionist bondage. Republican presidential hopeful Abraham Lincoln bolstered Northern beliefs. Additionally, he and his gathering were more dedicated to the Union than to states' rights and thought about the possibility of withdrawal as treasonous. Regardless of the polarity among North and South, Lincoln won the administration on November 6, 1860. Presently, South Carolina and 6 other Deep South states started to pronounce their withdrawal from the U.S. to secure their entitlement to keep slaves. This bunch at that point molded the Confederate States of America on Gregorian logbook month 4th, 1861. On April 12, battling started when the Union-held Fort Sumter in South Carolina was assaulted by Confederate officers. The bloodless barricade endured 34 hours and finished up with Union surrender. The two sides pushed for additionally battling. At the point when President Lincoln mentioned volunteer armed forces from each state, it caused 4 more slave states to withdraw and join the Confederacy. That implied 11 Confederate States of America versus 23 Union states. Southerners surrendered their posts in government, and this enabled Republicans to pass charges that would somehow or another have been rejected. One such undertaking was the Revenue Act of 1861 that acquainted salary charge with the United States to pay for the war. The following noteworthy conflict was Virginia's first Battle of Bull Run in July 1861. The North expected a simple win since they incredibly dwarfed the South. Be that as it may, Confederate powers unflinchingly made the fight with a plan to move encourage from Thomas Stonewall Jackson. The Peninsular Campaign and the Second Battle of Bull Run of 1862 were two all the more humiliating Union annihilations. The principal real fight inside the North went ahead September 17, 1862. This additionally ended up being the bloodiest fight in the war, and ever of the United States. Maryland's Battle of Antietam guaranteed around 23,000 lives and brought about a vital triumph for the Union. On January 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This report pronounced the opportunity for 3/4 of the nation's 4 million slaves and made closure, subjection and need of the war. A couple of months after the fact, the Battle of Chancellorsville was battled in Virginia by Major General Joseph Hooker's Army of the Potomac and General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army of Northern Virginia. The Confederates won, however. They lost Stonewall Jackson to a benevolent flame. Lee proceeded with his northern development until the Battle of Gettysburg in July 1863. This Union triumph brought about the biggest death toll of the whole Civil War. On November 19, President Lincoln paid regard to troopers slaughtered at that fight with one of the best talks in American history, the Gettysburg Address. 4.7 years past our dads delivered on this landmass a substitution country, arranged in freedom, and devoted to the recommendation that each one-man square measure made equivalent. At that point, Confederate powers in the West were for all intents and purposes devastated. Ulysses S. Concede was instrumental amid this, and he promoted the Confederacy in fights like the Overland Campaign and the Siege of Petersburg by 1864. Finally, on April 9, 1865, General Lee's Confederate Army surrendered to the Union Army underneath General Officer Grant when the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse and finished up the war. By at that point, approximately 600,000 troopers had kicked the bucket, and Southern impact in the U.S. had debilitated. Only 5 days when Lee's surrender, Lincoln was shot by Confederate sympathizer Crusader Booth. In any case, Southern powers kept on surrendering. The Reconstruction era pursued the Civil War. Amid this period, endeavors were made to reconstruct the nation, and in 1868, Ulysses S. Howe was chosen the 18th President of the United States. He endeavored to emancipate liberated slaves, and managed Ku Klux Klan brutality, just as the Panic of 1873 and resulting budgetary misery. The Compromise of 1877 was a push to calmly keep the nation together. While it finished Reconstruction, it likewise introduced the Jim Crow time of separate however equivalent racial isolation that just closed with the Civil and Voting Rights Acts of the 1960s. If you like our video, please subscribe to our channel. Press bell icon for new update notification.